Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Let's get on the crazy boat.
What's it? You always have the best kind of arbitrary random line right after I push the button. Let's get on the crazy boat. I don't know. Is the crazy boat a thing?
It sure is.
It's if you're crazy.
That's right.
You're on a boat.
It leaves from Port Looney.
A good fine morning to you, Andrew.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
We had to record a little bit of a different time because we're doing a very this movie is Au Courant. It is. We're wrapping up our. Well, I guess we're wrapping up our series of existing Bourne movies with the Bourne Legacy, which just came out yesterday, and we have now both seen it, and we're going to do some talking about it.
Yes, we's going to do some chatting.
I'm going to get me some of that. And how? Let's first of all, let's do the where can people find you bit, so they don't have to listen to the end if all they were doing is listening to get your Twitter address.
That's I know that's why they listen. People can find me at Soda Creek Film, or on Facebook at Soda Creek Film, or over at rashpixel.tv. And those are the best places.
Excellent. And I'm at Pete Wright on the Twitter, and rashpixel.tv/MWL. You'll find all the old shows. You can also, I've been having more and more people follow the SoundCloud feed for the show, which is always nice. You can follow us at SoundCloud what is it? I don't even know what it is. SoundCloud/Rash Pixel. I'm gonna find that. I'm gonna find that out.
That's a good question.
I know, right? So go to soundcloud.com/rashpixel, and you can find all the shows and sets and look for the movies we like set there. So there you have it.
There you have it.
And it always helps if you drop a quick review in iTunes. That's very kind of you to take a few minutes to head over to iTunes and write a quick review and share some notes with folks. It helps folks find this show who are interested in all things film.
Definitely. Yes,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, are we going to talk about any trailers before we jump in?
Well, I think we should talk about the trailers from the film that we just saw. I assume we saw the same trailers.
Well, I don't
largely
know. I mean, the trailer I'm most excited to have seen this week was the one for Zero Dark 30, Catherine Bigelow's new movie, which was not on my screening of the Bourne Legacy.
It was on mine.
Was it on yours?
Yes, it was.
Oh.
Yes, it was. It was. So why are you excited about this film? Because it's the Hurt Locker Part 2?
Yeah, well, that's it definitely has that feel. Catherine Bigelow, I think, really is a masterful action filmmaker. And, Strange Days. I mean, some of the ones that she's done, I'm not big fans of. Like, I wasn't a fan of K-19, Widowmaker. But that being said, it certainly was had its share of action in it. And what she did with Hurt Locker, I thought was just stellar. And the way that she told that story and the everything about that film, I just really loved. And this movie, which is about, the inside story of what went on to capture bin Laden, it just looks to be very intriguing and very engrossing. So I'm really looking forward to it.
I love the trailer. It feels like a trailer to a Mike Hustwit kind of a documentary. I love the redaction theme. I love the way they play the voiceovers, and it's just it's a dramatic trailer, and it really sort of brings you in a very cool way. So I think this movie's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Let's see what else played.
Well, I saw the new trailer for Lawless. I guess we've already talked about that before, but it's Warner Brothers is actually going back, and I think it's Warner Brothers. Weinstein Company. They're going back and actually redoing the trailer, and they're reshooting scenes from the film in the wake of what happened in Aurora, Colorado. Because I don't know if you remember from the original trailer, but there was an actual scene where the gangsters rip through a movie screen and shoot up the crowd.
Oh, good Lord.
Really? I know. I completely didn't remember that.
I didn't either.
That happening in the trailer, but then I read that story and I was just like horrified. I was like, I cannot imagine that ever playing in a movie now. And I think very smartly they're going back, and I mean they're reshooting, they're actually rewriting some of the story to basically reshoot that element of the story, and it's I mean, it's a good thing that they're doing that. It's just definitely a reflection of the times and what you have to be aware of when you're making films.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's chilling.
Definitely.
Let's see, the Lawless, and then let's see, I saw the new trailer for the latest what's the zombie one?
Didn't see a zombie one.
Mila Jovovich.
Oh, is that another Resident Evil?
There's another Resident Evil, and
right.
It's I really celebrate the entire zombie and mass extermination via disease genre.
Right.
And so I will definitely see this one. I would see Mila in just about anything, noting full well that I escaped my senses, my better senses at the time.
Which is smart. Which is definitely smart. Yeah, I have a secret fascination with the Resident Evil movies. As bad as I know they're going to be, I think I've seen everyone. Actually, no, I take it back. I think I missed the last one, but it's on my queue.
Oh yeah. No, I've got the last one too, and it's it's like Chinese food. You see it, and immediately you've forgotten what it was about, but it's but you'll see it again and again. So I saw that one, and it's another wonderful umbrella corporation trying to exterminate Mila Jovovich.
Boy, that umbrella corporation.
They sure do have it in for some random people. But there's what? Okay, so any other trailers you want to talk about before?
I just saw the other one I saw was Trouble with the Curve, the new one with Clint Eastwood, which is, I think it's his return to acting without directing.
Yes.
So it's kind of exciting.
This was with Amy Adams and bringing Sexy back. What's his name?
Yeah, Justin Timberlake.
I'm gonna. This totally surprised me. I didn't even know this movie existed, and saw the trailer yesterday and was very moved by it.
Yeah, it looks to be good. It's always nice seeing Clint get up on the screen. So
and baseball movies. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. We're working at building another baseball series.
That's right.
Maybe we can throw this one in.
Absolutely. Okay, so I wanted to talk just briefly about Total Recall.
Did you see it?
I did see it.
I haven't seen it, but I haven't heard good things, but I still want to see it.
Well, there's a reason for that, Andy. There's a reason you haven't heard good things.
Oh, that's too bad.
This is one of those movies, though, where I mean, they capitalize on some science fiction tropes in a really cool way. There are just little things. These little things, like, for example, is your phone ringing? You can't find your phone? Well, sure you can, because it's embedded in the palm of your hand. You want to talk to somebody? Just hold your phone up to your ear, your hand up to your head, and you're talking. You're talking on the phone. Want to move to a video call? Just take that very same hand and place it up against any piece of glass in the entire Total Recall universe, and you're there.
That's pretty cool.
Things like The Fall. Okay, apparently we've totally destroyed our the United States has totally been destroyed because the rest of the world exists in New Britain, or whatever it's called, the new global UK consortium of countries, and that's where all the rich people live, and all of the servant class lives in Australia. And so every day people shuttle over from Australia to the other side of the planet.
Wow.
Well, how do they get there? That's such trouble. Like, how do you figure out how to get there? Well, you go through what's called The Fall, which is a train that goes through the molten core of the planet. Takes about 17 minutes. There is a very cool gravity shift right in the middle. And then you come out the other side, and that's it. And so instead of going to Mars and dealing with all that stuff, they go through the planet to the other side of Earth, and they never really leave Earth.
Wow.
Now,
interesting.
The possibly the best part of the film is the airport scene where, 2 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 2 week scene, because the original 2 weeks woman makes the cameo, and they say, "How long are you going to be here?" And she says, 2 weeks. And then he says, "Okay, you may pass right on through." And her head doesn't fall off and explode.
Oh,
at all.
you're kidding! That is awesome. I didn't know that they did that.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. So there are some like as usual with these movies, some of the tech and the gear and the effects are really really ingenious and fun to kind of let go and watch. But the in general, the movie itself is pretty tough to get through, and Jessica Biel is still smoking hot and generally awesome. Kate Beckinsale spends most of the movie running and yelling at men around her, and that's about the extent of it. And I've already forgotten the leading man's name. Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell is...
I was going to say Colin Firth. That was a totally different type of Total Recall.
Colin Firth in Total Recall. No, Colin Farrell, he's hunky and brooding. And that's about the extent of it. I think that kind of summarizes my experience with Total Recall. It was... the big question for me is, was this movie... does this movie replace the original Total Recall for me? And I think the answer is no, for one reason. There is no Guado.
That's a bummer.
I think they failed on that front.
Are bagging, I've read some reviews talking about how they're starting to get concerned about some remakes, and a remake, Hollywood is convinced that if you do a remake, it's going to just make a bunch of money and all this stuff. And it's surprising to them when a remake doesn't make money, yet maybe they need to look at what the script is before they make it and write a good script for it. Maybe that will make money.
Wow, that's so... it seems so smart.
It does.
You should be in Hollywood. Oh goodness. Well, they I don't think that anybody actually read the script probably before they made it, which is sad.
Sad, yet not surprising.
But you got to see it. You had to see Total Recall. It's a staple of my youth.
Yeah, I'll be renting it.
Yeah.
I'll be renting it.
They did, the cars, the magnetic, the maglev cars were an interesting sci-fi sort of conceit played out. The highway system was clever. There's a lot of cleverness to it, but it's just yet another movie that goes into the databank of films that are beaten down by poor scripts, no matter how shiny they are. So,
yeah.
Okay, so let's talk Bourne.
Yes, so let's talk about Jason Bourne.
Jason, yeah, right. So this is the first film that is the experiment, I think, of the studio to franchise the Bourne series beyond the trilogy by Robert Ludlum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at this point, I think we can safely just say, Robert Ludlum, other than name, really has nothing to do with with the films.
And even more,
Robert Ludlum in spirit.
Robert Ludlum in spirit. And now it seems like they have stripped down what they are using as source material from the books, because there is a Bourne Legacy by Eric von Lustbader, which was the next from they did successfully franchise the Bourne series in the books, and there are 8 or 9 books or something like that. And Eric von Lustbader,
Eric's written 6 of them.
He has written
7 of them.
Yes, actually. Now more of them than Robert Ludlum did. But I think the studio is now only taking titles because in the Bourne Legacy, Jason Bourne is still in it in the book. It's a book about Jason Bourne, and so here we have the first take with the new actor Jeremy Renner and a new original story in the Bourne series, Bourne universe.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think?
Well, I'm torn because I liked it as much as I was hoping I would in some aspects, and I was also a little disappointed about it in some other aspects that I just didn't feel worked as well as I wanted them to. And I really liked Jeremy Renner. In fact, the cast, I didn't have a problem with anybody in the cast. I thought they cast it really well. I think that's been a strength of the series so far, is they've always cast great people to play all of these roles. The directing style, I feel like we kind of left that shaky cam style that Paul Greengrass had been using in Supremacy and Ultimatum, and kind of went back to more just that intensified continuity style that was being used in the Bourne Identity by Doug Liman. And and that was nice. It definitely had just a nice feel to it overall. I liked the locations. I think the challenge came in just really tapping into the complexities of what was really going on inside the programs, and just really trying to understand everything that all of these different programs were up to, and how this character played by Jeremy Renner, Aaron Cross, how he ties into it, and what he's trying to achieve over the course of the film. And that was an area I felt was a little weak, was what he was really trying to do.
Yeah, I think that what he was trying to do is to what they call, so after the first sort of the first act, and we get through some of the introductory, and the introduction of Aaron Cross was, I think, long and well. I think it was well paced. I mean, I like the way we are introduced to Aaron Cross, even though I thought opening up on a body in the water was a little bit played. I ended up liking sort of his journey that we get to watch him take through the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And through the whole time you see him taking these drugs, so the little green pill and little blue pill, and we learn that the meds are, one of the meds is to keep his physiology stable, and the other to keep his cognitive processing stable because of all the upgrades that have been done to him through the process of Treadstone and Outcome. And so he's on this journey. That's how we learn about the drugs, and it turns out, and I think this is what you're getting at. It turns out that the whole sort of political story that's going on, and what's interesting is that this movie is operating in sort of a parallel timeline rather than in any sort of chronology to the Ultimatum, Bourne Ultimatum. This is operating at about the same time.
Yeah.
So we get to see what's going on with this side of this sort of new angle in the same universe and the same point in the timeline. And so the political story that's going on that I think was really capitalized in Bourne Ultimatum ends up in the second and third act of Legacy being really sort of ancillary to it. And his journey ends up being a far more simple one, which is just either get me more drugs or get me to a point where I don't have to take the drugs anymore.
Yeah.
And that seemed weak to me as well. Like it just seemed that it was, it just didn't have quite the same impact.
Right.
As the lesson that I feel like they Greengrass had gotten us to with Bourne Ultimatum. Like I really think in terms of where this movie came in the series, as the audience, they had already matured us beyond the simple "I need the drugs" motif.
Yeah, and that's because essentially, he's kind of in my understanding of Aaron Cross as the character is, he signed up for this particular program. He really wanted to be in it after having nearly been killed in action over in Afghanistan or wherever it was. He wants to be a part of this program. He wants them to take care of him, and then when he's in it, he's unhappy with the assignments that he's having to do. Very much kind of like Jason Bourne, and the atonement that he felt he had to do with the Russian girl because he killed her parents, which he was told to do, and then he really felt that it was just not right. It seems to me that scene where Aaron Cross is meeting up with Bayer, and they're in some Middle Eastern country or something like that. Bayer is saying, this is the sort of thing. Don't worry, we're the sin eaters. That whole conversation.
Loved
we have to
that
do
conversation.
these bad things for the better of society, and he seems to not want to do that, and so he kind of gets, I don't know, a hand slap, which is in the case of these ultra agents, go up to the Yukon and do a scavenger hunt for us.
Yeah.
And then when you're good, we'll bring you back.
Yeah, when you're sufficiently broken down again, which I think is an interesting place where the sort of the way they handle the character sort of diverges in this film from the last three. And maybe it's because so much of the last three movies is devoted to the fact that Jason Bourne has so little of Jason Bourne in his head, that we're able to see, we're able to see how his soul sort of reacts to what he's doing, to his jobs, right? And so we're accustomed to having that sort of I'm a good person doing evil things discussion in the context of this guy who's trying to rediscover who he is. We are not accustomed to seeing, the way Jeremy Renner plays, this character. We're not quite as accustomed to seeing these agents, these guys who have been brainwashed, have quite so much natural ability to question their orders. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like when he has that conversation with Edward or Eric Bayer,
right.
He really looks sad about it, and that's the first time we've seen that sort of emotion to a guy who's not otherwise fundamentally broken, like Jason Bourne was.
Right.
The rest of the agents are totally cold, hard killers, and so why is he different? Why is Renner's character different in this case? And I don't I don't know that was sufficiently explained for me.
No, it wasn't, and I guess that's where I think I lost track of the point I was trying to make earlier. But that's what, for me, with his particular character, I mean, it's interesting. We're following him along through this journey, but really at the same time, like you said, we're following him so he can get some medication. Like that's the motivation for the film.
Yeah,
it's not him trying to, grow and change and get out of the program and atone for what he's done. I mean, yeah, he kind of, doesn't seem that thrilled about it, but he seems to be wanting to get out of it. Like when he writes "no more" on the mirror, and leaves his tags behind. He's only doing that because he has always had to keep taking this medication. And I mean, sure, maybe he would just stay in the Alaskan wilderness forever, or the Yukon, wherever it was, so that he didn't have to go back out and kill some more. But I just never got that sense from him that he was overly guilty about the things that he was doing and really felt bad and wanted to change.
Yeah. I'm not sure where that lies. If that's a strictly a plot issue, or if that's a character issue in the way sort of Renner plays it, or the direction or Gilroy's direction. I find it sort of interesting that this is the kind of what we're talking about. I did not have any problem with Jeremy Renner as the replacement of Matt Damon, who I liked very much in these movies. And
I thought he was great.
When I first saw the trailer, I found myself really sort of heartbroken that Matt Damon was not a part of it. And I think Renner absolutely plays this off. I'm a big fan of his, and everything I've seen him in, I really, really enjoy. And he's one of those guys I like watching on screen. And I think he does the Bourne series justice.
Well, he brings a lot of intensity.
Yeah.
He's a very intense actor. He also is a very intelligent actor, and you can see that there's always wheels spinning in his head as he's putting things together. And I think that's one of his strengths, is how he uses that in this particular film to help tell this story and help move it along. And in a way where I think it just, you or the audience really do get connected to him right away and through the whole film. I mean, he's just very easy to connect to.
Well, I think that really comes, that really hits home when they make it to Malaysia. And, one of the things.
Manila?
Manila, yeah. So they make it to the drug manufacturing plant. And at this point in his sort of character arc, he's hitting the floor. He's coming down because he hasn't had the cognitive processing drug in, 51 hours or whatever it is. And you're sort of watching him deteriorate, but he does it so subtly, that it ends up being this sort of, magical connection between him and Rachel Weisz's character, the doctor, who is now at this point, come around to helping him, to virus off, and get himself fixed so he doesn't need to take the drugs anymore. But that's the sort of ticking clock. They have to get him virused off before he actually hits the floor. And I think the way he plays that, there's this series of sequences, on the plane, airport, on the plane, in the taxi cab, and into the actual facility, where I think he plays that really elegantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
What'd you think of Rachel Weisz as our femme fatale?
I don't know if femme fatale is the right word, but I've always loved her. I think she's an amazing actress who always brings a lot to any story. And she's clearly not afraid of getting involved in action sequences and chases and having to run and, ride on and dangle off the backs of motorbikes and all that, which is great. I think she's a great actress for it. But also she brings just so much to the story by being this scientist, really, who's in a way, kind of, I don't know if immoral, I think just amoral. She's looking at the science, and she's so excited about the science that they're doing that she's willing to look the other way as to what is being done with the science. Yeah. And I found that so interesting, how she knows the world that she's in, but she's kind of blindly going along with it. And it's really interesting how she plays that, because she plays it just kind of like any other scientist. But, when all sorts of crazy stuff starts happening, she knows the world that she's in. It certainly surprises her, but she knows that this is kind of what, unfortunately, the sort of stuff that has to happen. And then she has to acknowledge, it's interesting. They cut that line from the film that they use in the trailer when she's talking about how excited she is about, this level of enhancements and what they're doing with these people. And Jeremy Renner's character has that line, "I'm not a science experiment, Doc." Mm-hmm. And they cut that from the film, which I thought was interesting, but it's in all the trailers out there. And that very much played up with the whole idea that in the name of science, there are these people out there who can amorally forget that they're dealing with just another person and look at them like number 5, which is how she's always seen him.
I think you get that sense when the agents come to her house, and she sits down with the supposed or presumed clinical psychologist, doctor of clinical psychology. And she sits across the table from her, and she finally comes out and says, "Do you know what goes on in that office, in that laboratory? Do you have any idea? You've got to check
Are you
this.
even clear to have this conversation?
Exactly. Yeah. Are you clear to have this conversation with me? When she talks about how, they're doing, she starts coming out about saying they're doing this behavior modification at the sort of molecular level, and you have to see you have to check his blood. You have to check his blood. But the way she plays that scene, I think, is really terrific, because you end up reading the pride on her face, even though this was, she just witnessed this horrific event in her office where she works this sort of sacred space, and you can see it on her face that she's still really sort of proud of the science that happened there.
Yeah,
and I thought that was really, it's why Rachel and I are so close.
And it was interesting playing this character. It's an interesting mirror to the character she played in The Constant Gardener, where she was somebody who was trying to help people using science and found out what the corporation was doing and worked against them and ended up getting killed for it. So it's an interesting parallel between those two characters, I thought.
I absolutely agree, and was only just struggling to make a connection between her and her character, in The Mummy. But I think yours is better. To your point, though, we should talk about Constant Gardener. That's one of my very favorite films.
It is. We need to do a Jean Le Carré.
Yeah. Okay, so she did a great job. We like her a lot. How about Edward Norton?
Okay, Edward Norton is. I think he's a fantastic actor. It's hard to go wrong with him. He brings a lot to the table. We've already discussed him before on the show in Fight Club. I really liked him in this role as the kind of the head of the really the guy who's kind of designed all of these programs. Like, he's the guy who's behind everything from Treadstone through Blackbriar to this program called Outcome, to Larks, and there's another one like Emerald Lake, I think is one that we see in there. He's kind of the man behind all of these programs, the guy kind of running the shadow corporation called, I can't remember, NRAC or something like that. NRAG. He runs NRAG, this shadow corporation that works for the government and basically makes these super soldiers and then contracts them out to the government for the government to use as operatives. And I found all of that so fascinating. And in fact, I mean, it's the sort of stuff that our government is really trying to do with some actual programs that they have out there, with some other wonderful acronyms for the names, like DARPA and IARPA are the ones that our government actually has: Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Agency. These are research programs that our government is actually doing to enhance the cognitive and physical performance of American soldiers and spies. They've been doing this for like 60 years. So that, I think, is really fascinating that Tony Gilroy tapped into that. And the way that he ties Eric Byer, Edward Norton's character, into this world of political, like the government side, the intelligence side, and the corporate side. It also really becomes a very interesting antagonistic character that really is reflected in a lot of Tony Gilroy's films. You have Tilda Swinton in Michael Clayton. You have both of the heads of the corporation in Duplicity, and or in the two corporations, the battling corporations, and then you have him. And it's interesting, he seems to really have tapped into how corporate interests are slowly taking over how things happen in our country. And Edward Norton, I think, does that really well, and I really enjoy him. In fact, I think he's a fantastic antagonist in this. My only gripe would be he just always felt slightly too young. Like, okay, this is the guy behind all these programs, but he's like, late 30s, early 40s. And it just like, I felt like it would be somebody like, like an Albert Finney or David Strathairn or one of those guys Stacy Keach even, the older guys would be the guy behind all of this sort of stuff. But I still just absolutely loved him in it.
Oh, Stacy Keach was so great. So anyway, I totally agree with you, and that was my initial problem with him too. I think Edward Norton has the same. He has very much the same challenge. I think that what's his name? Great
Winona
Gatsby.
Ryder?
No, Great Gatsby. What's the kid? The guy's
Leonardo
DiCaprio. He suffers the Leonardo complex, which is he's an incredibly powerful actor, but if the role isn't just right, he looks like a child, and that's just his curse. At the same time, I found as I was watching him handle this role, and particularly in the meetings with with the rest of the team as he was sort of orchestrating, moving gear and telling his minions to do certain things. I need all the support staff to clear the room. Making these proclamations and orders. I found he ended up sort of fitting the part very well. You sort of get this feeling that this guy was an early ingenue of political maneuvering and sort of scientific intrigue, and that he is in the position that he's in for a reason. And I think his casting in this role in particular ended up being sort of quite strategic. That you end up with a guy who is going to have to speak truth to power that is a lot older than he is in just about every major character. When he has to go around to each of these characters and these generals and tell them we're cutting the program and that means we're going to start killing people, I think he played that off really well, especially his speech.
That was a great scene.
When he says, I'm a patriot just like you are. I bleed red, white, and blue, and that means we have to do the right thing. And the Sin Eater speech, I thought was, as brief as it was absolutely perfect. So, in spite of Leonardo's curse, trademark, bling, I think he was really well cast in this film.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see who else.
I loved the short and tragic appearance of Zelko Ivanek. I can't really ever say his name.
Oh, he was
Jelko Ivanek.
Plays
Dr. Foyt, the scientist who shoots up the lab and kills everybody. He's a great actor. I think he was Damages. I think was he's one of those actors who you see everywhere, and then I think Damages kind of really helped him jump a little bit more to the forefront when he had that great part on that. But just really interesting, and just it was really creepy, actually, how he just walked around blank, just killing everybody he knew. And it's interesting because it made me think, and I doubt this is the case, but when they decide they have to close the outcome program and they're killing all the outcome agents, you've got outcome number 1, who's the character in Pakistan. He gets killed, or takes his pill and dies. Outcome number 3 is the guy in the cabin that we meet at the beginning of the film. And I think that's a really interesting conversation that we should chat a little bit, or an interesting scene that we should chat about. Outcome 4 is the girl in Korea who dies. Outcome 5 is Aaron Cross. And outcome 6 is the black guy who we see come into the lab and get tested by, what's her name? Her character's name, I can't remember what. Rachel,
Martha.
Marta checks him, and then he dies. But outcome number 2, there is no outcome number 2 ever in the film. And I'm sure it's not the case, but I kept wondering, is Dr. Foyt, played by Zelko Ivanek, is he an agent? I mean, clearly he works for them, and he's designed as kind of a backup plan to wipe everybody out. It's not that he just happened to go crazy and kill everybody. But
why would you sound very convinced that he's not outcome number 2? Why not? Why couldn't he be? I mean, I have read nothing to the contrary.
Well, no, it's just my only thinking is that if they are putting somebody through this program to develop their intelligence and their strength, I don't think they're just going to have him sitting in an office all day and working as in the science lab. But you know,
although I would say by the same logic they would. I mean, wouldn't you, if you're designing this thing and you have this? I mean, the science lab is a key asset in a program like this, right? So we're assuming that why wouldn't you want to have somebody that you can completely control on the inside for just this reason?
Right, but it couldn't. But okay, maybe he. Well, I think the big reason is because all of the outcome agents have to come in to get tested. And so
yeah.
Everybody would know that he's an outcome agent.
As he takes off his jacket.
He's not a Larks agent. That doesn't mean he's not an Emerald Lake agent. He could be an agent with one of these other programs.
Right.
But I can't imagine that he would actually be an outcome agent because Rachel Weisz would be pulling his samples of his spinal fluid and whatever
be running his own blood
that they were doing. She'd be doing all those tests on him every couple of weeks.
He's just running his own blood every lunch hour. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I buy that. Ivanek he's such an interesting actor. I mean, the guy. It seems like he always plays the same sort of character.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I'm looking at his filmography. He's been around forever. I think I feel like I first I sort of discovered him in Hannibal in 2001, and I thought he was kind of a new to the new to the business but he's been around a long time. I had forgotten, for example, that he was on St. Elsewhere.
L.A. Law.
Yeah. Fantastic. Truman. He was in Truman.
He's been around for a long
forever.
time, and he's been in a lot of stuff. 24,
he was great. He was obviously in Black Hawk Down. West Wing he was in. That was great. His and then most recently Heroes as Emil Danko. Great character.
Yeah.
Okay, so he did. That was a good scene.
So he's great. Stacy Keach, we already mentioned. It's just nice seeing him getting back out there. And, it seems to be kind of I don't know if it's a trend or what, but a lot of, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there's a few directors out there who really enjoy casting actors who kind of had their day and have kind of disappeared from the spotlight and aren't in a lot of great stuff anymore. They may pop up in just like, very supporting characters or just be straight to video movies. Stacy Keach certainly kind of fell off the map for a while, but it was so nice to see him again. Like I love seeing Stacy Keach, just like I love seeing Tom Berenger and all the people that Christopher Nolan keeps bringing into his films, or Quentin Tarantino does that really well.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it when people bring these old faces because they really carry so much acting weight, I think, and I think they bring a lot to the table.
I think they do too, and in this movie in particular, Stacy Keach, he plays the older, sort of experienced, kind of political animal being bossed around by a younger upstart really well. You know what I'm saying? Like he is there is that role as particularly older men make that transition from being the head of something to for some reason needing to be bossed around again, and I think that relationship that we see on screen between Stacy Keach and Edward Norton is really good and interesting to watch. I found myself just really every time he opened his mouth, I found myself just really riveted.
I thought it was interesting right at the beginning of the film when we're really in kind of the Bourne Ultimatum world where we're seeing the conversations happening about, Waterloo, and we're seeing Scott Glenn talking to Noah Cross, and Scott Glenn, who is the head of CIA.
Yeah.
He goes and he talks to Stacy Keach, retired Admiral Mark Turso, and tells him about this situation. And Stacy Keach, who you think is like the highest one in the chain above him, he goes, okay, well, I'm going to have to go talk to
Buyer.
Edward Norton's character. As they keep going up the chain, and then all of a sudden you end up, the guy who's at the top is this young business tycoon sort of guy.
And the way they introduce Buyer is he looks like a soaking wet cat. Like he's running in the rain, and he's got these skinny little legs, and he's just kind of is wearing this sort of oversized, poncho kind of hoodie. And he doesn't look like he could be in charge of anything. And it turns out he's the big boss. I thought that was a fantastic choice.
Yeah, it was an interesting twist. It was.
Yeah.
What did you think about how they peppered in bits of the story of Ultimatum and kind of where Jason was at the time, how things were going with that story, what was going on with Landy versus Noah? How did you think that played out, leading all the way through to the end of the film?
Yeah, I think that ends up being sort of the most interesting question of all. I was concerned with how they were going to introduce this new character and how they were going to make a fourth in the series. I thought it was really great. It was choosing to make the legacy occur in the same timeline. I sort of feel like they had to do this in order to make it feel like it was part of the series. Like, they had to establish, it's like we talked about weeks and weeks ago about this idea of directors and writers exploring the universe of a particular story, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this has become very quickly a great example of how to execute on this universe exploration, because we're immediately brought back into the Bourne universe through context that I think was brilliantly executed in the first act. When we are brought right up to speed with Jason Bourne, phone calls ringing. Jason Bourne is here. We see the assassination of the reporter again. Mm-hmm. I thought that was fantastic. And I think it really served to compress the time that it has been for us as an audience not seeing a Bourne movie. God, I thought it was really smart. I thought it was clever and ingenious, and I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I absolutely loved how they did it, and I would add surprise at the ending and how everything from how you thought it was going at the end of Ultimatum to how it's actually going when you reach the end of Legacy was a very interesting twist. And they're really pushing to set up another, I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy or what, but it's clearly designed where we're going to have more going on with that political side of this whole story. And that's, I think, what I found most interesting about Bourne Legacy is that whole element of the story. And if they can find a way to really boost the goals and the motivations of Aaron Cross in the next films, then I think that it'll be really strong. Like I said, in this one, I felt like the government conspiracy side of things was the strongest element of the film. And unfortunately, Aaron Cross, our protagonist, and his story was the weakest.
It was, but what I found, okay, there are a couple of things I think interesting about that. First, I was going to add that I think Gilroy's choice to make these a parallel timeline, it was a complete surprise to me. I hadn't read anything about it, and that was really gratifying. Now, however, I think he has also set the stage for making a really unique series of films in which we don't necessarily move in chronology, but move in parallel. One of the things I thought was fascinating was that they allowed the other outcome agents to speak. Particularly the guy who came in to have the full panel done, who ended up dying, the Fisher guy who ended up dying on the dock.
Right.
I can totally see him in his own film.
Yeah. I
can see a film that surrounds each of these outcome agents moving along this parallel timeline as soon as we grow sort of fatigued of Jeremy Renner. If that day should come. Like I can see them, setting precedent with this film that they can move backward and forward throughout the universe and just tell the interesting stories that the universe demands, not necessarily relying on a linear timeline. I think that's great.
I agree. I mean, obviously they'll have to do it in a way where we're still, because I think what's going to end up being the overall story tying them together is going to be this, the reveal of the government conspiracy, and I think how they're playing with the Landy versus Noah story.
And there's still an angle there. I mean, we didn't see much Landy in this movie, and there's I think there's another side to her story. But one of the things, I think is interesting. The other precedent that they've established is there's always another secret government program. Right?
Right. No kidding.
We've moved.
They sure had a pile of them.
Treadstone to Blackbriar, and oh goodness, now we have Outcome and Larks. Which is a terrible name. But I thought it was. I just thought it was really great that they've established. Now they have the ability to call on other agents' stories. I'd be interested in following, for example, the Korean woman, just to see how. How does a woman agent actually play this, play this part in the political and sort of strategic drama?
Yeah, that would be a really interesting one. I got to say, one of my another of my complaints. It's not a big one, but the Larks agent, when they are talking about him, he really seems like he's like a superhuman. They're like his test levels are beyond anything they've ever seen, all this sort of stuff. And he certainly was intuitive, and he really was knew how to track these guys very quickly and very well. But when it came down to it, it just didn't seem like he was that much different than Aaron Cross. Like once they were actually fighting,
Well, I think I don't know. Maybe I'm adding something that I shouldn't, but I thought that they had made it clear that he was just like Outcome without the regret.
Oh, I thought they said he had increased. I can't remember what they said now, but I thought it was like I thought there were additional things like, enhanced pain, suppressors, and which, I mean, obviously he gets shot and thrown off a motorbike, yet he still gets back on and continues riding. Yeah. So I guess there you go. Maybe that's it.
Well, I did want to get your thoughts on the car. I mean, one of the things that all of the Bourne movies is done very very, very well is this car chase, right? There's either the car chase or the moped chase or whatever. There's always a chase through a city, and in this film it's the climax of the film, and we end up with starts with a parkour chase across the buildings and ends up on motorcycles and driving through the seedy streets.
The seedy streets of Manila.
Of Manila. What do you think? What do you think of the motorcycles?
Inevitably, you knew that they were going to have to do another big stunt scene because, like you said, it's kind of become part of the requirements of the Jason Bourne series to have a great car chase that was, very realistically done, and it was a lot of fun. And I think they came up with a really exciting one. I mean, Dan Bradley, who we've mentioned before as the stunt coordinator on the last two films, I believe, did a fantastic job as second unit director, stunt coordinator on this film. He really knows how to put great stunt scenes together. I mean, whether it's just climbing off a bridge and jumping onto a bus, or racing down the streets and slamming into a bus while you're driving and twisting the bus around and having it flip over. I mean, it was great stuff happening in that scene. I really enjoyed it. At the same time, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like there was something missing, but I don't know what it was. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't, it didn't blow me away quite as much. Although the ending of it was pretty spectacular, I thought.
Of the actual chase?
The end of the Larks agent.
Okay. In general, I don't know. I just don't think that the final chase held a candle to any of the prior big chases.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because it was, largely on motorcycles and it's hard. It's more challenging to shoot on motorcycles in a way that makes it really look realistic. But in general, I thought it was pretty dumb. And the final, the end of the Larks agent, while the actual accident, the actual crash I thought was pretty cool. The fact that it was, Marta who just looks over and kicks him.
Yeah.
I thought was, that to me was about as interesting as, Catwoman shooting Bane.
Right.
on a dumb line like that. I just thought that was a really weak way to end this guy, as you say, who's supposed to be the most powerful thing that Cross has come up against.
Right.
And so I thought it ended on a whimper, and that was I found a letdown.
I do agree. I think I really enjoyed it, like the parkour chase across the roofs.
Anytime you see him
up and
running
down was great when he jumped off the roof through the scene they've shown in all the trailers where he jumps off the roof through between those two little tiny tight buildings, landing on the police officer and then
disarming them and
beating
killing
up
them.
the other one.
Yeah.
That was great. All of that stuff was great. The chase through the streets was great. I actually really enjoyed the beginning of all the motorcycle stuff when the police were chasing him and the Larks agent was chasing him. I enjoyed all of that stuff. Particularly when the Larks agent was in the police car and slamming into the bus, trying to crush them between the bus and the railing. Like that stuff was great. And then how they, from about that point on, once the Larks agent gets on the motorbike, that's, I think, when it started.
It deflates.
Deflating, yeah.
I thought that, to step back, I guess 10 minutes or so in the film when they, when the police are making their way to the hotel room, and Marta sees them and sneaks up around the corner. There is that sort of sense of intensity that we're building to, as she screams, "Aaron, run!" That I thought was a real highlight. Sort of an emotional highlight, and it was really well executed. And they all split and chase her. Some of them chase her, and some of them, he is able to escape. And so we begin the running scene. And I think you're absolutely right. Anytime you see, any of the scenes where Jeremy Renner is running, and you see the sort of physical nature of his character and the way he's playing the character is really strong.
Yeah.
But man, the bikes, you just lose it on the bikes. And it's an unfortunate way to end this film on a whimper, not a roar.
Well, and because he's practically unconscious on the bike by the end.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like he was shot and now he's driving the motorbike unconscious.
And here's our protagonist who's supposed to sort of save the day, and he ends up, I just don't, I didn't buy that that we should have seen him be saved. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think that's definitely a weakness. And I think bringing up the whole Catwoman shooting Bane moment, I think, was a perfect example. It's if your protagonist is not the person stopping your antagonist in your story, it really takes some of that energy away from it.
Yeah, I think one of the best recent executed sort of action movie rescues is Ghost Protocol, where we do see Ethan Hunt's character absolutely destroyed in this final fight in the car parking, the vertical parking lot, right?
Right.
And yet he still saves the day.
Yeah.
He is still, it's okay to have the character beaten up. Like, it's okay to have him, crushed and fallen 7 stories into an airbag of a BMW, but he still was able to save the day. And that's what I wanted out of this movie. I wanted to see that final push from our main character that really highlights that he is special, that he has gone through he's leveraging. This was the question. I think they brought this up. This ends up being the handgun on the mantelpiece thing, right? In the beginning of the movie, they actually bring up, she says, "Why do you want to stay, what's the word? Enhanced," right? And he has this story, this emotional storyline for, kind of this seething undercurrent about how he used to be dumb. And so he, he has this sort of personal drive to stay smart and stay strong. And yet when it really counts, he ends up kind of passing out on the motorcycle. And that's, gosh.
It really kind of took it down a little bit there.
It really did. It really did. Now, I do want to go back to something you started with in the very beginning, which is the editing by John Gilroy. This is seriously a family movie.
Yeah, it really is. Between co-writing the script with his brother Dan Gilroy, Tony Gilroy also had his brother John Gilroy edit his film. So yeah, it's definitely kind of in the family business.
Now you bring up the the Queasy Cam that we had really established and really perfected in Bourne Ultimatum, and I found this film to be a welcome relief. I really enjoyed watching it, and the visual pacing was something that I could grab hold of, I could keep track of, it was just really soothing for an action film, and I felt right at home. In terms of the cinematography by Robert Elswit and the editing, Gilroy's editing, I found it to be an easy film to watch. Yeah.
I mean, you never really had the problems of context. I mean, obviously that ties into the whole, shaky cam style and that, the quote unquote chaos cinema style of shooting a film where you don't know where you are necessarily. You lose context with your physical surroundings of the environment that your actors are in.
Right.
In this particular film, you definitely don't have that. You really are able to tell where you are, and it's very clear and easy to move through the film with these characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was a relief. I thought the production design, we end up in a film that very much feels like we're in the same universe. It does that very well. Obviously, that's as a result of Tony Gilroy and, the general Gilroy involvement in the universe. I think they kept it very consistent. I didn't have any.
And he used James Newton Howard
for music,
which is a little different for composing than the previous 3 films. Which actually I thought was fine. I think that it was really interesting how James Newton Howard used some of the themes from the previous films by John Powell. He had the Jason Bourne theme, and he also had kind of that action driving theme that was used. He used those really well in this film, but also composed a nice bit of music himself that I think worked really well.
It was the same. Was it the same Moby?
Yeah, the same
track, Extreme Ways.
He's done different remixes every time, but yeah.
But it's now that's been used. This is the 4th time that's been used, right?
It was the 4th time, and it had the least punch.
Yeah, I mean, it had that same, that kind of the Bourne sound.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you're right. It just felt kind of. It didn't feel Ultimatum to me. I think the Extreme Ways Bourne's Ultimatum version that was released as a CD single when the movie came out, I think was probably the best version of it. But this, at least it felt sort of familiar.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'll be curious to see where they go from here, how they bring Aaron Cross and Marta Shearing back into the story, if they do at all, in subsequent Bourne stories, and how they end up coming back into the fold and what they end up doing with it. Because, I mean, for all intents and purposes, their story feels very closed.
Right. No, closed in, in the way that their story feels sort of finished, but open in the fact that they're both still alive.
Well, yeah, sure.
They're on a boat. I think if anything, they've proven they can bring those characters back. Look at the split between Bourne Supremacy and Bourne Ultimatum. I think they ended up making some interesting decisions based on cast availability, perhaps.
Well, and you also have between Bourne Identity and Bourne Supremacy, I mean, it's a 2-year gap,
right?
While Jason Bourne is just hanging out, having a good old time in India,
right?
And so, granted, he's having bad dreams, and stuff,
yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, there's definitely ways that they can deal with it if they choose to.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's see. What else do we need to talk about? Production. We don't know. Obviously, it's still opening weekend, so we don't know anything about how the film is performed.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Hollywood Reporter, they're estimating that it should be pulling in around 45 million this weekend. it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they had it playing every hour on the hour at the theater I was at to watch it this weekend or last night. I'm going to be, I mean, it wasn't packed. It was really not packed. So I don't know if that just was the time I was at or because they have it so many screens or if it's still, I mean, I think that the theaters in general have taken a dip in attendance after the shooting in Aurora. And I don't know if that's still affecting it or not. I mean, they're looking at this being the movie to push Dark Knight Rises off of the #1 slot. So we'll see if they're able to do it.
Looks like it's 52% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I know we need to talk about Rotten Tomatoes in general, perhaps soon. But in general, it seems to be kind of rated as the not quite as compelling next step in the series, in the Bourne series, and I think it may live up to that.
Yeah.
In spite of all the individual elements, I think that are very, very strong in this film, the overall picture, the overall picture is not quite as intense, I think, as it is brought down by the really simple plot arc of the main character, whom we are supposed to be most interested in. And I think that's where that's sort of the film's Achilles heel. But I think Renner does a great job picking up the role, and overall the rest of the cast is strong.
They've never had a problem with casting. They always cast fantastic people in these films. They look great. They've got a great gritty vibe, very realistic. I think that it's a bit of a stumble after the last trilogy, but I seriously think that they could do some really interesting government conspiracy trilogy here and do a very unique take on this universe and come up with some fantastic films. So I look forward to it. I certainly would buy a ticket to the next one. Yeah,
absolutely. Any other business on this film or others? Where do we go from here? Would be the next question if there is no other business.
No, I think we pretty much covered it for this. I mean, it was a very fun film to watch, and I had a great time, and it had its bumps, like I said. But yeah, I think that we covered it. So moving forward, I think our next series that we're going to be talking about is the late, great Richard D. Zanuck, the mega mogul Hollywood producer. We're going to be chatting about him and his contributions to the world of film.
We have a number of Zanuck films, and we have a I think this may be our longest series yet. And
outside of David Fincher, I think that still tops it at 9.
No, you're right, David Fincher. But I also think that the Zanuck series could be the starting point for several other series discussion. And I, as I look at this list of Zanuck films, these are some of the very, I mean, these are just some of the very best films in my cinema memory. I mean, they just are. They're the very top. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I am too. It's going to be a really fun series to go through. So it'll be some good discussions.
Excellent. Well, I think that is it. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to the show, and we'll catch up with you next week on Movies We Like.
And if you are listening to this today, make sure you tune in tonight for our Google chat about the Bourne Legacy.
That's true. We should add that. Today is Saturday, August 11th. We're recording this. And this evening, August 11th at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time, we're doing our next film board hangout. We're going to be continuing this discussion with our own movie heroes. I believe we've got the good, kindly Sarmento is joining us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mike Evans.
Mike Evans will be there along with Chad Stoops.
Joining us.
And so we will be continuing this discussion on the Bourne series, all things Bourne, and I think Steve's going to perform a little number for us from the what is it? What was he going to sing? Something?
That does sound familiar.
Yeah, no, I look forward to that. I think anytime we can get him on the mic, we're in good shape. So looking forward to a good chat tonight. So please join us if you are able, and look for the link on our Facebook page and at rashpixel.tv/movieswelike. MWL. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Pete. talk to you this evening.
We wanted to take a moment to thank you for your continued support over the years. It's hard to believe that we've been having weekly, in-depth discussions about movies since 2011.
That's right, 12 years and counting. Producing this show is a labor of love for us, but it does require a lot of time and effort each week.
If you enjoy our podcast and would love to help keep it going, there are some easy ways you can show your support. One is by using our Originals page to shop for the original source material that movies we've discussed were based on.
That's right. In Season 1 alone, we covered 13 films adapted from books or plays, from Charlie Kaufman's adaptation to David Fincher adaptations like Fight Club.
In Season 2, we covered even more, like Powell and Pressburger's The Red Shoes and The African Queen from our series about legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff.
We can't forget about the 4 Jason Bourne movies we talked about. Love those movies. Well, the original trilogy, at least.
For our Richard D. Zanuck series, we did Jaws, Rush, Big Fish, and more. And for our horror series, we talked about John Carpenter's The Thing, which was adapted from Who Goes There?
We did our first great car chase series with movies like Bullet, The French Connection, and Drive. And for the holidays, we did Preston Sturgis's Christmas in July.
We had a great John Huston series with adaptations like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
And for our baseball series, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Have I told you lately how much I love that movie?
Yeah, I think you have. Plus, our Magician series and Heist film series had adaptations as well.
Tons of page-to-screen gems. Listeners can find the details and links to the original material at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play, or movie you buy through our links helps support the show, and it's no extra cost to you.
So dive in and get your next read today. thenextreel.com/originals has all the films adapted from other sources that not only we have covered, but all of the shows on the Next Reel family of podcasts. Check it out and get reading.
Support the show and build your reading list. It's a win-win. Head to thenextreel.com/originals.